Auniche ne togoko kolman, eledo. Not ready to answer that question? You've come to the right place. This video teaches you how to introduce yourself and how to ask other people for their names in Bambara. Ankata. Welcome to another episode of Basic Bambara, a project from Ankata, my initiative to create media and resources for speaking and learning Mandeng. If you're new here, think about subscribing. Otherwise, if you think this video goes a little bit too fast, there's a link down in the description below. You can get a text, audio flashcards, and some exercises to help you along with the material we'll cover in this video. All right, let's jump into it. All right, in this video, we're going to cover three things. Number one, the question, what is your name, first or last? Number two, how to respond to it. And number three, a few of the different variations that you may hear, since people don't always use the exact same form, depending on where they're from in West Africa. And then I'll throw in a little extra bonus, which is just to point out one of the useful things of having this skill, because you can also use it to pick up new vocabulary. All right, so in Bambara, the expression that people use to ask your name is going to sound like this. I tɔgɔ kodi. More slowly, I tɔgɔ kodi. Okay, so that expression is made up of four words. Let's look at them one by one. The first one we have, or that I want to look at, is tɔgɔ. Tɔgɔ just means name, or in the case of people, first name specifically. I, we've already learned that word from a previous video, and that comes up in greetings, right? So we're used to things like ini sogoma. So I is the second person singular pronoun, and if we combine it with tɔgɔ, we've formed a possessive noun phrase that means your name. I tɔgɔ. Okay, after that we have two more words. Let's take di first, since that's the easier one. Di just means how, okay? So thus far we have your name, how. What about that word ko? So ko is actually what linguists call a quotative copula. That's a little bit complicated. Copula just means that it's a verb-like word, and that's because you can't use it the same way that you would with every other verb, but let's put that aside for now. The reason it's called a quotative is because it typically has to do with speaking. So a lot of times when you hear ko, it can be translated as say or said. In the case of our expression I tɔgɔ kodi, we should say that it just means is said, okay? So if we put it all together, I tɔgɔ kodi, that means literally your name is said how, or more colloquially, what is your name? So before we cover how to respond to this question, let's talk about last names. So last names, you're just going to replace that word tɔgɔ, which technically means first name, with jamu. So jamu means last name. So if you use the same expression, I jamu kodi, you would be asking someone, what is your last name? All right, so that might seem a little bit weird. Why am I already jumping into last names? Well, that's because in West Africa, last names are a huge part of social relationships. So it might seem like to Westerners, oh, I don't need to deal with that for now. But in West Africa, frequently someone might actually ask you what your last name is before even getting to your first name. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can think about watching episode 10 of Na Boroke, where I talked with some people in West Africa about what we sometimes in English call joking cousin relationships. So there's a link down in the description below. All right, so if somebody asks you, I tɔgɔ kodi, how will you respond to it? It's pretty straightforward. You're actually just going to replace that word di, which meant how, with your name. And you'll also need to switch around the pronoun, right? So instead of I, which means you, you're going to need to use which means I. Okay? But if you combine it with tɔgɔ, tɔgɔ, you're actually saying my name. Okay, so if I asked you, I tɔgɔ kodi, you could respond, and let's say your name is Adama, you would say, tɔgɔ ko Adama. All right, so it's the same thing when it comes to last names. If somebody asked you, I jamu kodi, you could just respond, jamu ko jalo, or whatever your last name is. All right, so the sentences that we just covered are more or less standard for Bambara and Dioula, but I want to cover a few different variations that you may hear in case you're out and about and people ask things in a slightly different way. So things can differ in two ways. Number one, they can differ in terms of people making things shorter, and number two, they can differ depending on what region they're from. They might have a preference of one word that they're going to change. So let's look at them turn by turn. So when it comes to making things shorter, sometimes part of the sentence I tɔgɔ kodi will just be implied. In that case, it's typically the kodi which will be implied, and people might just ask you I tɔgɔ or I jamu. In those cases, you can just assume that they're asking what your name is, even if they haven't said it in the full form. Similarly, you might actually hear people ask I tɔgɔ plus one other word that we've already learned, and that word is dung. So we already learned dung when it came to greetings, right? People might ask, I muso dung, and your wife. How is she is the implied part, and that's going to be the same thing when people ask you your name. So it might be that you're talking with someone and they say, I tɔgɔ, and you say, n tɔgɔ ko Adama. And then they're going to switch to your last name and say, I jamu dung, and your last name. All right, so the other ways that name sentences can vary are in terms of the word ko. And that's because ko actually is just one grammatical form that gets used in these sentences. Without going into the details of the other ones, you should be able to recognize the fact that sometimes people might use be, so I tɔgɔ bedi, or they might use ye, n tɔgɔ ye Adama, or finally, they might just have it blank, I tɔgɔ di. All right, so now I want to add another little bonus thing that you've picked up by learning this. So earlier I said that tɔgɔ, when it comes to people, means first name. But in general, tɔgɔ is just the word for name when it comes to things or entities out in the world. This means that we've picked up a new skill set based around this word. In episode 2, for instance, I pointed out by knowing do, the presentative copula, let you ask people the question, mudo, what is it? As in, you're pointing at something, you're like, what is this? And you could use that to pick up new vocabulary. Now that you have tɔgɔ, you can be much more precise. So if you replace I or with the word ni, which means this, so if you asked somebody something like, ni tɔgɔ kodi, you would be asking them, what is this, and then it's implied thing's name. Ni tɔgɔ kodi. And they could respond to you, a tɔgɔ ko sigilang. And actually, you can just replace this slot with whatever you're interested in. So if you wanted to know the name of a town, you could say, dugu tɔgɔ kodi. What's the name of this town? Or if you wanted to know the name of a specific person, you could say something like, muso tɔgɔ kodi. What's this woman's name? All right, any questions? Post them down below. Otherwise, want to help me make more videos? Think about becoming a patron or throwing a tip in the tip jar? See the link down below. Aiwa, ni dirai alagawati weredama kambe anche.